Okay, so just sinking and relaxing and just moving gently from side to side. So just feel the full and empty. So one side is compressing and the other side is expanding. Okay, so now let's just feel the figure of 8. So just a slight turn towards the foot you're moving towards. and then just into riding horse. So just feel, because we've been attending to our own space, our own thing, we have a certain posture. With this is sort of pulled back slightly. And if I want to connect with the space in front of me, rather than my own space, I need to bring this forwards, just to sort of bring my face up, really, to look into the eyes of the other. So now the spine is going down the thighs, and it has this feeling of cutting under and creating this circuit. So just feel the spine and feel where your legs hit the spine. So the two hip bones that come in and just grasp the sacrum. So the spine is 33 vertebrae when we're born. So there's 7 in the neck, 12 in the thorax, 5 in the lumbar spine, 5 in the sacrum, and 4 in the coccyx. So each one is separated by a little disc, we know that. So when we reach puberty, the vertebra of the sacrum, those 5 vertebrae, start to fuse together in order to create a strong block which can take the forces of the legs. And by the time we're 30, that fusing has finished. So the sacrum is now just a block of muscle, of a bone. And the 4 vertebrae beneath it, the coccyx, they don't really fuse. They almost fuse, but so there's a little bit of mobility in the coccyx. So what we're trying to do is, remember when we started, Johnny was always talking about understanding energy, getting into energy and somehow getting a little bit of a grip on it, a little bit of an understanding. And so one of the things we have to try and do is just loosen up the sacrum, almost like we want those 5 bones in the sacrum to start being a little bit separate, so we can get a little bit of mobility there. Because it's interesting that those bones start to fuse the same time that the child becomes a teenager and they lose that childishness, they lose that imagination, and also that body as one unit. Yeah? They stop being in their bodies so much, they come much more into their mind. Yeah? We're just trying to reverse that. So we're just trying to get out of our mind, really, and into our body, and also into our energy, into our imagination. And so just getting a little bit of flexibility. It doesn't have to be real. It can be just, like almost like you're remembering what it was like to have a flexible sacrum before you had to take on the heaviness of adult life. Yeah? So you can think of the coccyx as just being part of the sacrum. So it's just this big triangular bone down here. And the hips, when the hips come in, they only really grip at the top of the sacrum. So S1, the very top bone, the biggest one, the top of the triangle, if you like, and then the vertebra beneath that can actually be a little bit free. And then the feeling is that the very bottom of the spine, the bottom of the coccyx, is sort of trying to dip into something. It's trying to dip into like a pool from which energy can rise up the spine. So your coccyx is it's almost like it's trying to burrow down into the ground to tap that earth energy, which can then rise up and express in you. So just feel the sacrum. It's an amazing thing, the sacrum. It's like a triangle. So you've got the two legs coming out of the two sides of the triangle. You've got your upper body rearing up from the top of the triangle, and at the bottom of the triangle is a little sort of hook that's just trying to burrow down. And we just like it to feel sort of flexible and rubbery. Yes, a part of that is just the mobility here, and then part of it is this openness in these pockets, yeah? So this stops the hips from actually gripping the whole sacrum. It makes sure that, these arches here, you're just grabbing the top of the sacrum so the bottom part of it can move around a bit. Okay, and now let's just do a little bit of this. So just with the normal body breathing, so breathing in, expanding, breathing out, contracting, breathing in, extending, breathing out, flexing. So attacking and yielding. And now get it more into the belly. So just pulling the belly. So the tail is rolling under and the head is rolling over a little bit. And then here the tail is pointing back a little bit and the head is going back. So the whole spine is breathing. So you breathe in as you extend and you breathe out as you contract, as you flex forwards. 1, 2. And then just start to get it much more from the sacrum. So really point your tail back. And then really pull the tail under. So we're getting flexibility in a roll in the hips. So like the hips are rolling back here. And then here, this is rolling under. So here my tail is extending backwards. Ooh. And here it pulls under. Don't worry too much about the breathing. Just get the tail going. Tail pulls under. Tail points back. Yeah, so everything that happens in the sacrum and the coccyx is mirrored in the upper back, from the sacrum up, but it's magnified. Yeah. So a little tiny movement of my tail will get a big movement of my head, because my head is at the top of the spine. So there's like a sort of flamboyance and exuberance to what happens in the upper body when you use the tail. And our normal repressed tail basically stunts our imagination, it stunts our expression of energy. Ooh. So you just want the feeling that it all starts in the tail, as it's initiated there. And then there's a sort of lag, there's a delay before that gets into the head. Ooh. And now let's just get it, just rotate here. So just try and just rotate this. Yeah. It's better if you let someone else do it, but in the absence of another person, you can actually do it yourself. So I'm rolling the tail under. So I'm just making it very physical, making it real, because it's quite easy just to get these things happening on some sort of virtual plane and they're not really expressing in the body. So here my tail is really, you just have to be careful here, because you're getting a lot of movement in the lower back. The reason most of our lower backs are stiff is because they're weak. So pulling under and yeah, so it's basically just the pulling the belly in exercise, but we're trying to get it from the spine rather than the muscles. So the sense of something wriggling down and through the spine and trying to come out of the tail, and then the tail sort of wriggles under. And you sort of wriggle it under by tightening these muscles, but that's not where it starts. It starts in the tail, in the tip of the tail. Okay. And then just back to riding horse. And now let's just get the tail just pointing from foot to foot. So I point my tail here, and then I point my tail here. And just allow the spine to bow. Yeah, so where the tail looks, the eyes will tend to want to look in that direction. Yeah, so I'm sort of, the top of my spine and the bottom of my spine are both directed to the right, and then to the left. Yeah, so we'd just like, our interest to be from the head and from the tail. Yeah? So rather than being interested in like this with my tail pointing back, yeah, I'm interested here, but my tail is coming underneath. Yeah. So it's got a yielding quality because you're creating a whole that will accommodate the other person's energy. And just that feeling of being able to extend the tail down the leg, under the ground and up. So here. Yeah, so this is very much sort of Chen Manqing, your interest uproots the person. It doesn't pressure them. It actually gives them energy from underneath. So my tail is pointing down this leg, and then I just turn to it. So the tail has to be really active. Yeah, there's nothing passive about it. So it requires a lot of intensity, which is quite exhausting. Ooh. Okay, so let's just bring it back. So let's just go around the figure of 8 again, but without moving side to side, just some turning. Yeah? So it's like a version of waving hands in the clouds, really. Just think of the figure of 8 being quite big and three-dimensional. So it's all these surfaces rather than lines. So it's your whole arm is stroking it, not just your hand. That's it. So you can think of the bottom hand as being with your tail. Yeah? So it's the middle finger. The middle finger is the one that directs the energy. Ooh. That's it. So really let the figure of 8 surround you rather than be in front of you. And just feel how, it's very much like a different part of your mind, a different concentration that is with the tail than with the hands. And so we're used to having our concentration with our hands, but to try and get the same sort of feeling for the tail, like your tail is another limb. Wow. Okay, and then just back to riding horse. So just feel this area, sacrum just sort of hanging down. Legs just coming straight out. The sides of the sacrum. When you look at like a picture of a skeleton, and you've got the femur, that the thigh bones come up and then they angle in to the hips. There's pretty much a straight line to where they would actually hit the sacrum if the hip bone wasn't there. So your legs are pointing right into the sacrum, and you just got this bone between. And you really want to feel like that the hip bone is arched, you know, like this. Yeah. So it feels as though the hips come down onto the sacrum because of that arch. And then that really allows the sacrum itself to hang heavily and to have a sense of flexibility within it. Okay, now as we stand, just feel the shape of the spine. So you've got the sacrum and the coccyx, which is like a curve here underneath, yeah? And that is the equivalent to the curve of the cranium, so this, yeah? So in cranial sacral therapy, the cranium and the sacrum are basically the same thing, yeah? They're both talking to each other all the time. Then you've got the lumbar curve and the cervical curve, which are correspondences, if you like. And then you've got the thoracic curve, and in the middle of the thoracic curve, you have the heart. Yeah? So when you look at the spine, the middle is your heart. When you look at the whole body, the middle is the Dan Qian. Yeah. So we just want to feel those curves, yeah. So at the very bottom of the spine, you know, where the tip of the coccyx, it's actually the anus, yeah. So in the Hindu thing, it's between the tip of the coccyx and the perineum, which is basically the anus, yeah. So that's where the energy of the earth is coming up into, yeah. And then you've got the crown of the head, the equivalent of that up here. And then you've got the lumbar, you know, the maximum curvature there, so the Min Meng and Dan Qian area. And then the neck, that's more the throat, the thymus, the mouth, that whole area. And then you've got the heart in the middle. Yeah, so there's like 5 centers. So the base center, yeah, which is the very end of the coccyx. This center, the Dan Qian, which is really important because that's really where your legs hold on to the spine. You know, it's actually between L5 and L4. But it's that whole, their areas very much. Yeah. And then the heart, which is in the hollow of the thoracic curve. And then you've got this, which is bulging out because of this curve here. So this is so the throat is really strong. And the thymus, if you like, is the bottom of the throat. And then the mouth and the nose would be the top of it. And then you've got this, the third eye with the crown, that's all like one area, which is the top of the spine. So when you sit and meditate, the spine just becomes very vertical, really. This is the whole idea. And those sort of centers, they thin a bit. So this is why standing is just so important. Because in a sense, the centers become more distinct when we stand than when we sit. And then the mind is just sort of vacant, basically, pretty vacant. And so it's sort of, it's just receiving sense impressions of which it's not particularly interested. And they don't get filtered through the thinking mind. They just come into the body. So you have like an emotional response to everything instead of a think. So it doesn't stimulate thinking, it stimulates feeling. So in that Buddhist poem that John learnt off by heart, bright and empty, functioning naturally, the mind does not exert itself. It is not a place of thinking. Difficult for reason to fathom. Okay, and now let's just try the figure of 8, one hand at a time. So just turning, you have to turn away from it to get through the middle on the way down. And you have to turn towards it to get through the middle on the way up. So it demands a waist turn. And again, it's a three-dimensional figure of 8 rather than just a line. So there's a sensuality to it. There's a femininity. It's like you're caressing a naked body. And just feel it in relation to your own body, yeah? So you're going over your head and then you're slipping under your feet. So you become the figure of 8 in a sense. Yeah, so you're reaching over your head. So there's a sense of crouching as you come over the top. So don't let the body rise when you bring the hand up. So here you're sinking in order to get under the feet. And here you're sinking to get your head under the top. So it's just sinking all the time. So imagine if it was a naked body you were caressing, just how gentle you would be. Gentle and attentive. And then let's try the other hand. So when you come up, the figure about you're turning towards the person. And when you come down, the figure about you're turning your back towards the person. So you're getting your wing in. Just feel the tail going back when you reach up and the tail coming under as you come down. Yeah, so you're really getting the spine flexing back and forwards, but as you turn it, so there's like, almost like a twist going up the spine. And then let's just get both. And just try and keep it real. So when we get both, we're so used to it, we tend just to do this. Yeah. So just still with the turning of the waist. Yeah. So keep both arms independent. Yeah. Don't let them just lock into a structure that's just whizzing around. So they're slipping in and out all the time of this alternation. Ooh. Yeah, so one half of your body is attacking and the other half is yielding, so it gets really complex. Yeah, so your spirit is calm, so you're not excited, but your whole body is full of movement. So your body, your spirit has to remain calm to make sure it doesn't sort of wobble too much or explode, you know, it stays contained. What we're looking for is not excitement, because that just comes from the ego. That's the ego just wanting novelty. It's more like enthusiasm. Yeah, so enthusiasm, it just literally means to be possessed by a god. So there's this sense that there's something, so it's like the figure of 8, there's a god in everything, and there's a god in the figure of 8, and you become possessed by it. And you just allow that possession to take you without losing your equilibrium. Yeah, so you have like 2 tails, one for each side of the body. Yeah, so one tail is coming under and the other one's sticking back. And it's really just the legs, yeah, the 2 legs, but like a tail quality to the legs. So the legs are so used to just being workhorses, being depressed and overworked or underworked. So here they're really expressive of energy. Yeah. So the sobriety of your spirit drives the excess inward, and you get into the internal. Yeah, so if you just let that exuberance express itself externally, then it'll just sort of leak away. You'll have a good time, but it's not very productive. So just internalizing. So it feels like the figure of 8, the coils are really tightening into the spine. Okay, let's just bring it back. So just feel that it's like there's this sort of wriggle all the way through the body. Yeah. Ah. And there's a wriggle all the way down each leg. Yeah. So your spine, in a way, everything that is singular, you know, especially like the spine, it's really like two. You've got this sort of comes up like this, or like this and like this, depending upon how you feel it. It's like there's two spines. And they're sort of like two snakes that sort of coiling around each other. And it produces this composite that is just immensely rich and complex that you'd never be able to sort of unravel and sort of clearly demark. You just have to allow it to energize and express itself. So yeah, so just letting the energy settle into your core, into your spine. And then just feel let's just feel the centers. So the base one, yeah, so basically the anus. Yeah, so the tail is sort of wriggling around that area, the end of the tail. And then the Danqian Ming Meng. So this is really sort of just stable and heavy. And then the heart, which is just like this big open globe, you know, sort of the hollow chest, you know, that just can receive anything. Yeah? It's like a bottomless pit. And then the throat, the thymus, the throat, the mouth, so this gleaming area that's being pushed forwards by the cervical curve. So that's what you tend to see and interact with on the person. It's their upper heart, their voice. And then this part here, the cap, if you like, the crown. So the third eye is included in that. So 5 points. And it's nice for me because it really corresponds with the physicality of the spine. You can feel it in the spine. It's not just these arbitrary chakras that somehow you've got to imagine. And then just sort of really relaxing here. So the end of the tail, it almost feels like it unravels and it just drops down and touches the floor wherever you want it to. So our creativity starts in the tail. But the mind, you know, the ego can always produce cheats, if you like, you know, sort of versions, simulations. But you always know, you can tell when someone's being phony. You know? You can tell when it's coming from the wrong place. Yeah, so we're slipping in and out of attending to the other, which requires this to come forwards a bit, and the spine to sort of lengthen down my legs, and attending to our own sort of feelings, our own impulses, which requires this to sort of, almost like the tail goes back a little bit in order to feel this, feel the body and feel the space, my ward-off space. So we're slipping in and out of those all the time. And we want that slip to sort of be elastic. So it's very easy to get from one to the other. It doesn't require a major adjustment here. Okay, so now let's just bring it back to attention. The same thing, it's just, in a sense, it's just a bit more private. Get the same sort of wriggly sort of mobility down here. Yeah. So when you wake up this area, you're basically waking up the devil in you. Okay, great.